And it just went on the
Speaking of, sign that the apocalypse is upon us. I'm watching ESPN, which I've gradually started watching less and less, and graduating more over to beIN Sports because they just cover so much football. But they do this thing, the not top 10. And I don't think they've ever mentioned Spurs in their 30-year-plus history. You probably count the times they've mentioned our club on one hand. And wouldn't you fucking know it, the number one not top 10 play was his own goal. I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. I mean, you have to be kidding me. You know what? Before I want to continue to talk about our style of play, but I wanted to run a thought by you. I saw a tweet maybe a week or so ago, a couple weeks ago, somebody talking about podcasts, and this guy says, I don't really like to watch podcasts because it's just all about the ebb and flow. If Spurs are playing well, the podcast is positive. If Spurs are playing bad, it's negative. And look, we laugh about that all the time. It's true. We're all emotional people. We all have an attachment to our club, and we tend to rise and fall with the club's performances and success or lack thereof. But in this case, I mean, there's some things going on, right, that I'm genuinely excited about. Like Dele Alli, I mean, he makes the hairs on my arms stand up every time he has the ball. I mean, I can't think of a player that I've been more excited about. And there's other players on this team that I'm very, very excited about. But let's chitty chat a little bit about Dele Alli. What does Dele Alli mean to you, Chairs?
Well, it's interesting. I'm serving myself a huge slice of humble pie because in pre-season I picked Pritchard to be the one making the
it's just because it's the Brentford connection, that's all.
Well, I just didn't believe that Ali at his tender age would be starting,
and rightly so,
let alone doing what he was doing. I picked him to go out on loan and Pritchard to be.
Oh, that's right. Well done for that's right. You did say that, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm very pleased in that regard that he is making the impact and having this run. I think he's the benefactor of the injuries to Bentaleb and Mason, but I think his partnership with Dier is proving to be very intelligent. And Dier is anchoring the back, which allows Ali to move forward, probably more so than we might have seen with the other two.
Yeah,
they tended to both hang back. Mason would have a marauding run every now and then, but it wouldn't necessarily go anywhere. Ali seems to be really supporting the top five in the offensive options, and I think that's what's getting us excited. He's getting in the mix with some good footwork, some good passing. I think he's had an assist and set up some good options for us, as well as obviously contributing to a goal. And I think he'll have more of that. And it's definitely putting a buzz about the place. Yeah, people were saying, well, he shouldn't really get called up to the England squad. Well, unfortunately, he did. Fortunately for him and every Spurs fan, and he made his debut yesterday in the England game, and actually he didn't have a lot of playing time. I think it was about 6 minutes with stoppage time, but he did have one marauding run down the right, and he cut into the box. I don't know if he was going for glory, and I give credit to Estonia. They marked England out of that game quite effectively, and passing options were not very good.
Yeah.
It took counter-attacking and one very excellent nutmegging pass from Barkley to secure the points for England. But it's exciting to see the growth and maturity of the young player that we were wondering who he was. And we started paying attention to MK Dons once we bought him in January and loaned him back to the club. And I thought his contributions so far have been better than expected.
Yeah, without question. I mean, look, and I can't blame you for necessarily thinking the way that you did a couple of months back. He's a 19-year-old kid who played, in what? I played League One. I mean, it's challenging enough for a 19-year-old player coming out of the championship to play. But I'm going to, I'm such the exaggerator, right? And I get so overly emotional about things. But I'm going to go ahead and say this. I think he's extraordinary, and I think his trajectory is going to be extraordinary. He doesn't seem to be really fussed by any of this. I mean, Simon, he's played a lot this season, and we haven't noticed a bad performance out of him yet. From his debut, although, and he's played in important matches. He's played in different positions. You know, we put him in more offensive roles. He's played in the pivot, and he's been remarkable everywhere he's put him. And to your point, I think one of my biggest takeaways is that he is so involved at both ends. Like how he moves into space, he just turns up where you need a player, an influential player, to turn up. And he runs. I think I saw a stat the other day. Right? And we got a lot of guys in the team that run all over the place. We're the fittest team in the league, no question. And he's run more than anybody, and he never looks flustered. So and I look at him in Dier and think about these two young guys that have been so influential, yet they are so young and so naive, from an experience standpoint, yet you'd never see it, which is probably a good segue to talk about Dier. We're not going to have him at Liverpool, and due to his fifth yellow. And I don't know, did you see his reaction?
Yeah, he was pissed. And to be honest, that was a legitimate tackle. You could say he went through the player a little bit, but it wasn't a tackle from behind. It came from the side,
yeah.
And he won the ball. And
yeah.
I'd be disappointed to get a yellow from that.
Oh, he was.
I don't think it was yellow worthy. If he's going to give a foul, you give a foul. But he won the ball, and it wasn't dangerous.
Yeah, I didn't think so either. I thought there were two suspect yellows. They nabbed Vertonghen for simulation, which I didn't think was fair. I think he made a bad tackle, and Vertonghen jumped over him, and I think he just got a little clipped. And Vertonghen kept on running because he felt like there was going to be an advantage played, and then he heard a whistle and turned around, and then he got a yellow for that, which I thought was a bit silly. But I mean, maybe this is a blessing in disguise. And maybe, and I'm hopeful, I'm knocking on wood when I say this, maybe this is going to point to the depth that we have in midfield. Dier has been so influential, has been so important. I mean, it's surprised everybody. Yet, he's not going to be there. And in this league, you have to have a deep squad of players, guys that can fill in. And we've been very lucky that we've had exactly that. Players have been injured, somebody's come in, done well. You have players pushing players. So who do you think who's the natural to take his spot, assuming that the injury situation, somewhat stays the same? The players that are out remain out.
Well, to kind of counter your depth of squad, because two of them are injured, it really only leaves Dembele as the option, I think.
You're not going to put Carroll in there, are you?
No. If you're playing Liverpool, who automatically, from the appointment of Klopp, will be on a high. They're going to want to impress their boss, whether he's going to be on the touchline or watching from the director's box remains to be seen. I've got to think he's probably going to be on the bench and making his presence known immediately, and that's probably an expectation set by the board that you need to turn this around immediately. And that's not a game you want to put the pressure on Tom Carroll with. So I think sensible heads are going to nod to Dembele. We'd like to see Dier there. We'd like to see Mason or Bentaleb there. But at this point, with a week to go, we don't know their injury status. And
I agree with you.
You think Bentaleb would come back sooner than Mason, but I really haven't seen any information on their likely return. So you got to look at Dembele partnering Ali. I don't know where else you're going to put any defensive nuts and bolts to put that.
I think he'll be fine. I mean, I just think that the one struggle that I think we've had somewhat perennially with Dembele is just his lack of sort of forward movement, especially relative to Ali. So maybe we missed some of that. But that won't be a terrible give, if you will. And I mean, he's capable of moving forward. It's just not really his forte. But he's so strong on the ball.
Is that who you would have picked?
Yeah. For the reasons that you said, I just don't think. And even if everybody is, even if Nabil, were to be fit, you're not going to throw him in, against Liverpool. Right. And I thought, look, I thought it was a weird spot that Dembele was put in the other day. I mean, Kane off, Dembele on, and I thought that was a bit. I mean, to me, you put Dembele on off of an injury 10 minutes before time to hold a lead, not to try and go get a lead. But I thought that he did what he seems to always do quite well, which is hold the ball up very well. So yeah, I'm kind of I'm kind of with you. It's probably worth, and I know it's been beaten to death. We should probably talk about Njai and Townsend. Just quick thoughts there on those performances, because we got to see a little bit more of them.
Well, I wasn't impressed with either of them when I mentioned them earlier. That Townsend was injecting that speed and pace we needed down the right wing, but his final product was poor. And Njai, he ran around a lot, and really, I think he was just a bit impetuous with his final decisions, particularly with you shoot and it goes out for a throw, and that's almost criminal.
Oh, yeah, right. He had a bit of a Townsend moment where he did the double crossover, beat his man.
I really think Njai needs to get a start, and maybe the Anderlecht game will provide him that opportunity. And maybe Townsend. Yeah, I think it's worth noting. You said Lamela going off in the 55th was a bit of a head scratcher for me, but people have said, hey, let's not get carried away with Lamela after the City game, and obviously he added another goal in the Monaco game, and he kind of went back to old Lamela.
Yeah, kind of did. Wasn't effective. But what's interesting about that substitution, and not to say that Eriksen didn't play well when they were both playing together, but I don't know what it is, and I don't want to knock Lamela. I've certainly said my fair share of negative things about him. I mean, I share the same frustrations as most people. But our movement just looks a little bit more fluid or natural. Maybe it's just the sort of not the awkward nature, but maybe it's just the physical nature of how Lamela runs. But I don't know. It just looked more fluid, if you will. I don't know. Eriksen looks more of a natural player to me without Lamela. That's not to say they haven't had good moments together. Right. But yeah, I thought I thought to me it's like, well, you either take him off at halftime. I mean, what was the point of I would have thought either give him another 5 or 10 minutes or so, see if he could, be influential. Yeah. But in fairness to Pochettino, it really wasn't a bad sub. It gave a different element. We brought some speed in because Townsend came in for him, right? Was that who it was? Was it Townsend for
Chadley?
What were the subs? So we had Chadley went out and Lamela went out, and we had Njai come on and So, well, all right, my thoughts I'll differ slightly. I just think you need trials. Townsend, I want a player to shoot if he's beaten his man, and he certainly did that. He had a lot of shots. He had a bunch. Some were wasteful. Most were ineffective. He had one very good one, which got everybody all riled up, and then literally within a minute or two in another play, he followed a very good shot up with just terrible service. He had one opportunity where he's on the left side, so he's on his natural left foot, and he put a ball in on the ground right to the keeper. But the whole point is that he hasn't played much, and your comment about Njai, you'd like to see him play more. I would too. Townsend is he's a bit like Lamela. He'll show you something that you can get really excited about, and then he'll revert to the mean, and he'll put a ball 50 rows up in the stands behind the goal. And I think the only way that I can't necessarily fault people for saying no, he's never going to come good, but that was about as the most action that he's had in a Premier League game, I think, this year. So I'm not willing to write either of those two off. But I love the speed element, and I love the fact that we've got so many different looks that we can give people. We can control the middle of the park when we want to with certain setup, and then you could put some combination of those guys in there, have a bunch of speed, and run at people. But to your point, and what we talked about earlier with Montero, we've got to have better service. And I don't know whether you noticed this, but on the right side, Njai whipped a pretty nice ball in where he beat his man, and it was very, very close, I think, to reaching Kane. I mean, he was involved, and they were threatening. We had 19 shots on goal, 11 on target. They had 2. They had 2 shots on goal. They had the header from AU, who I think is a fantastic player, by the way. And then Lloris, how great is he? I mean, you basically do nothing for 85 minutes, and then you go make that save that he made late in that game.
Yeah, that was top draw pushing it onto the crossbar. So
he's magical.
Do you think we missed Son? He picked up the knock in the City game. We didn't know about it till afterwards, but he's missed both games. Do you think we missed him a little bit?
Well, maybe. I'll I'll say this: some of his performances or some of the games that he's played in, our style of play has really developed. It's been kind of fun to watch. There's been clever movement and some stuff that's gotten you out of your seat. There was plenty of stuff that got me out of my seat, and as I said, I watched that Swansea match. Ultimately, I've watched it so many times, and there was good football there.